All right, recording in progress. It is Pankration Philosophy, episode 218. I'm your host, Pocholo Cruz, and we got a returning guests, and then you also were a co-host for a bit and helping me recording. But Endo, welcome again to the show.
And audio engineer.
Yes, audio engineer. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
No,
that
great.
218 you said? That's an epic number.
Yeah, 200. Yeah, episode 218, and it just keeps on rolling. I mean, we were kind of talking like before this, but yeah, just how far this has gone. Really, just came with an idea of like, hey, why don't we do this? I mean, Ender, as you know well, was my unpaid intern that we used, and then of course Scott McDonald, aka Steve McDaniels, and then. Yeah, 218 episodes in, and we're still doing this. But yeah, it's great. It's great to be here. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.
But yeah, and then so I know it's been, as we discussed earlier too, it's been 7 years since you started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I guess just in terms of reflecting on that, like what's been, I guess first off, how does that feel? Like, this is almost kind of. It's kind of like when your birthday happens. Oh yeah, I guess it has been like that long. Like how did that feel when you're like, oh, it's been 7 years since I did this? Like how did that feel?
It's kind of crazy because that's a decent chunk of time to be dedicated to something, and there's no sign. Like I have no intention to ever stop. So
yeah.
But it's crazy how the time flies and how much it's changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like reflecting on that. When I hit that milestone with my 7th anniversary, I was just thinking about where I was before I started and where I am now, and it's been a pretty cool journey. Like I have a job now that's jiu-jitsu related. I teach jiu-jitsu, and because of that job, I was able to buy a car. I drive a Tesla now. That's kind of crazy. And just like all the relationships you form over those years, it's we've talked about it in past podcasts, but there's something deeply intimate about the friendships you make training martial arts, because I think it's such a physical, intimate thing that we do. So met so many cool people. And I when I think about there's this dichotomy too, where when I think about when I first started training and I thought about what someone who's been training for 7 years that felt like, I thought like that's wizardry. I'm never going to do that. And so here I am on the other side of it, and it's pretty cool. But at the same time, I also think I'm not as good as I thought those guys were. So, because I still get stomped sometimes, and it's like, oh man, because there's just so much to learn. You're just, it's infinite. You'll always be learning. You'll always be wanting to be better. And so,
there's not a moment where like, all right, that's it. I've learned all there is. We solved it. We're done.
But there's that simultaneous feeling where I do sometimes feel like a wizard.
Yeah.
And then I do also think I don't know anything. So.
Yeah. No, it is odd, that kind of dichotomy, but it's also that kind of comparative, because I think it's similar to when you're going to when you're in elementary school, people that seem like in high school, oh, those people are so old, and so, but then when you're in high school, oh, what the heck? I don't feel
those guys are so smart and wise. It's like, oh man,
and it just keeps going throughout life. Oh, once I'm an adult, then it's gonna make, and then you're like, wait a minute.
No one knows anything.
No one knows anything. Yeah. I think that's what good life is. Just realizing, wait a minute, no one really does know it. But it's just that passage of time there, and I think it is interesting that now that you are in, as you mentioned, a teaching role, it's you have to. Now you're encountering others who are earlier in their journey, and it's, as you said, now kind of like back again when you're in high school, you look at it now, and you're like, oh, look at this child, or look at this little person. You're like, ah, what do you know? So I guess like how has that been like for you in terms of teaching? I guess like reflecting, because I think your reflection kind of, that you realize, I have put in time in here, and how does that reflect, I guess, what you're teaching?
When I first started
Mhm.
teaching, there was so much imposter syndrome. Like, what do I
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
But you quickly realize that you do have a lot to offer, and just like the training itself, you do get better at the teaching aspect of
Yeah.
it. So just like you just want to keep training martial arts to get better at martial arts, like I just find myself constantly trying to get better at teaching as well,
Yeah.
simultaneously leveling up both skills. So I just I find I find it solidifies a lot of concepts in my own brain when I have
Mhm.
to distill it down to something that they can understand where their current level is.
Yeah.
That's always tricky, but it's always very satisfying when it clicks, and sometimes it clicks simultaneously for them and for me.
Mhm.
Like maybe something I do subconsciously, but then hadn't really thought about it until
Yeah.
they asked a specific question.
Got
And
it.
then, yeah, the coolest thing is it's a lot. It's hard to track progress in martial arts because people
Yes.
are always getting better. Also, the people that are better than you, they're getting better too.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see your own growth. But I
Mhm.
think it's even trickier tracking progress in teaching.
Yes.
There's not.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I've taught way better than I have. Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's like an odd thing to say. Oh man, so much. If I could
yeah,
teach
but
myself back then, I would.
yeah. Day one teacher Endo would get smashed by
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but oh
but
no,
but at the
but I
same time,
definitely agree with you. Just in terms of teaching, because I agree that teaching is a skill set onto its own, and just because, and what you mentioned is that there's a lot of like unconscious competence, like a lot of things that you do that you're not quite aware of. Like that's why this works because of something. Sometimes like the way things work, like you have an idea in your head why it works, but then you do it in like, oh wait, maybe that may not be the only thing. There may be some underlying like factors, because then you see other people and they're trying to do what you're doing, but like, no, it's not quite. That's not quite it. There must be something else. There's a secret, not quite secret ingredient, but there's an ingredient that I didn't quite realize that is important to this recipe here.
absolutely, yeah. So it is tough to gauge the progress, but there are a couple moments that stick in my mind where it's like, oh, I couldn't have done that like last year. Where like
Mm-hmm.
one time, I remember the first time someone asked me a question. Like when someone asks me a question that I've heard the question before and I've thought about the question before and I have the answer, it's like
Yeah,
easy to give.
yeah,
And so I remember the first time someone asked me a question and I hadn't really thought of that question before, but
mm-hmm.
then it took me like just a few seconds and I was able to like think about it like, oh, and I had the answer. Like,
Got it.
I remember that moment thinking like, oh, I couldn't have done that like a year ago. And then even just like this Monday, um, it was a smaller class. So,
Mm-hmm.
and when I started launching into the lesson, there was only two people there, and then some others joined a little bit later. But when it was two, I was like, I told them, I had a lesson planned for today, but since it's such a small group, what do you want to know about? What do you want to
Yeah.
work on? And this other purple belt who is quite experienced, he asked me about some single leg X stuff and some X guard stuff, and it's not really my A game at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was, and he had a specific question about entering single leg X and how when he just tries to force it, he just gets his guard pass because he doesn't understand how to control the entry straight to single leg X from like a standard open guard.
Okay.
And I told him like, I can't really speak to that specific, but I can tell you how Shiloh enters X guard, I single leg X on me
Mm-hmm.
as a transition from a different guard, like X guard or De La Riva guard. And I was able to build a drill sequence for the group off of off of off of that idea, on a position that I'm not great at.
Got it.
And he told me after the class how incredibly useful that my insights were. And so I thought that was like a milestone in my teaching, how I was able to like craft a lesson in
Mhm.
just off the fly, off of on a subject that I'm not great at, but my overall understanding of certain jiu-jitsu concepts and my understanding of my opponent's games, in this case Shiloh,
Mhm.
I was able to like give him something that would help him level up his game.
Got it.
So
Yeah,
that
because
was
it's like this. It's like the skill of like, all right, you got the information like in terms of a question, like okay, like and dissecting, like okay, what is like what kind of movements or how I guess like how to help them like in this. I guess because you runs like a problem or like a puzzle. It's like all right, like how can I that may not be necessarily that familiar with, but you're then able to craft like a drill or a situationals where you can put yourself and then help him in that particular kind of skill set or kind of particular problem. And which I think is a very that's like a teaching moment right there. Or you like that's not. I mean, I guess it could come from your own kind of training, but like the specific thing of having to do something that's not from your own necessarily own experience, but then trying to imagine out a scenario that like to help someone else. That's a very I would definitely say that's like a teaching moment and realizing that your teaching skills leveled up. But,
I think something that's helped me get better at that is I enjoy quite often after class doing what I call lab work with like another partner, where I'm like, hey, come over here, and then
yeah,
I try something on them, and it doesn't quite work, and we talk
yeah,
it through.
yeah,
Um, and that's usually on a subject I'm familiar with, but then you reciprocate, and they are like, oh, can you help me out on this thing?
got
And
it.
then I don't quite understand what they're working on, but then I can like shut it down a little bit, and then we talk it through about why it's not working, and then
Mhm.
tweak it and like refine it. And so I think that back and forth on both subjects that I'm researching, and then subjects that they're researching that I'm not familiar with, has
Mhm.
helped with that that part of teaching.
Yeah, because it's like both the thought, it's like the thought and it's like the mental and the physical like puzzle of like, all right, this is what we're trying to figure out. And because you're both in that, it's like a tinkering kind of lab kind of stage where there's not really like a correct answer, but you know that what you're doing right now is this is not quite maybe not quite efficient or as ideal as it could be. And you're like, okay, well, we're trying to go towards something like better. And then and I think there's definitely like I think lab is like a good because you're experimenting. You have like a hypothesis, like all right, well, this is I think this, and then okay, we'll run and see how the variables look, and you're like, oh, well maybe it does work, and then or maybe that doesn't work. Or what if I change this? And that's just the what do they call that? The Euler method, but some kind of experimentation like method of pretty much just figuring out of trial and error.
Yeah, I think any anytime you do stuff like that and experiment with a partner, it's going to help your teaching down the road, because you're just exploring movement and concepts.
Yes, exploring movement concepts, and then just also just being able to being able to state it, and then also when it's somebody that's coming out with a different problem, different perspective from yours, but you're trying to build the connection of like okay, like where are they coming from? Because I think that's a lot of what teaching is understanding like perspective and connecting things to someone else's viewpoint, because it's like for me as a teacher, like I realize there's definitely a lot of things that I see it that I have for better for worse. Well, not even better or worse. It's just a fact that pretty much all the moves that I can do are done from the same perspective of me. But I realize that since others are going to look at all like it slightly differently, so how can I distill like the knowledge, or I guess how can I distill like what movements or what things they need to, I guess what goals they need to do in like a slightly different kind of frame because everyone has, different body types, just the way they move differently, different, just maybe just also different ways of thinking. Like some people, it's like thought patterns, like what might be obvious to one might not be so obvious to others. Some people are just moving different things. So I think just just understanding that, I think just understanding, building that kind of connection, or understanding the connections to other people, is what helps in terms of teaching.
Yeah, I noticed when my first classes for a long time was just centered around my A game, stuff that I
Yeah.
knew really well. And then it just slowly evolved into me being more conscious and thinking more about, well, what is this? What do these students need? And sometimes it's not my stuff that I care about, but it's like the stuff that they're interested in, and their background and body type is gravitating towards, and so I think about how to give that to them now.
For sure. And that's the thing too, like gravitates towards, because even if somebody, some people just end up gravitating towards certain things, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes a bit of both, and that just shows what they're might be, not necessarily like more adept at, or just more like what's more I guess what's more of natural in terms of movement and for them. And it's like, I think realizing that is one of the things that really helps in terms of teaching.
It's always cool. I'm always looking for like a new analogy that will click with someone too, and when it hits, it's like, and it sticks with them and is the reminder they needed to just never make that certain mistake again. That's always cool too.
Sort of like mnemonic devices, or however helps them memorize like that thing. Because it's gonna be different for each person, just because they they think uniquely in terms of that.
There's no one size fits all in teaching.
No, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do a cookie cutter method. Well, there really is no like way to do a cookie cutter method, but I mean, I think it's attempt to be done, and they just try to get almost like the majority. But you realize that, just being able to, teaching is always like tailored depending on the student, because different students are just going to take to different things in different ways, like in terms of speed, pace, or in terms of even like what movements they're willing to do. And in an art like grappling, where there's so many possibilities, then that just leaves up so many more variables in terms of doing so. So in terms of I guess in terms of teaching, like leveling up your teaching skills, I guess how has that like been reflected on your own training? Like, have you found that in helping others, you find that helps you help yourself too when you're training, or does that help change your way you train?
I definitely think so. There's no way for me to like go back in time and clone myself and never teach. And
you never teach. We'll see.
So I can't really compare, but intuitively it feels like it's helped immensely. I just feel like my level of conceptual understanding is so much stronger than it would have been had I not started teaching so much. And then as a strange byproduct of it, that's not as directly related, but when I started teaching every single day, selfishly, I didn't want to stop my training workload. And so I'm just on the mat a crap ton more than I am. And sometimes when I'm teaching a class, I still do the live training, especially if there's odds, or if I'm just feeling like it, then I'll force someone to like take turns being out. So it just indirectly is with regards to leveling up my training. I just increased my volume by a ton of how much I'm on the mat. Even just teaching a move, you're going through the moves, and then on the times that you actually hop in and live train as well, that's just even more mat hours. And so I think it's The last year in particular, it has been like the pace of growth, I think, has been so much more than it would have been. Um, like it's hard to say more than ever because I think you do grow the most in the beginning because you just know nothing.
Yeah, because going from 0 to 1, that's a huge.
Yes, but there comes a point where you're kind of just chipping away at little improvements, refinements, and in that phase, I've because of how much I've been thinking about it, because of teaching, and how much I'm on the mat because of teaching and training at the same time. I think that refinement process has sped up quite a bit over the last year.
Cool. That's cool to see, and especially just of course makes sense. Just having more mat time physically, and then also thinking about it, having to think about it more because you're doing the moves and having to show them.
Especially thinking about especially when someone's struggling with a movement, figuring out what's the most important parts that they're missing, like not just what are the pieces, but ranking the pieces so that you can
in terms of like what's that higher or like priority wise. It's like, okay, there's probably there might be multiple things missing, but what's the thing that you're missing like the most that would then like help go to the next thing and then the next thing.
So I think that helps the student, and then me understanding that is a big deal and a bigger deal than this other detail helps me to do it myself. To make sure I
reinforces that. Reinforces that lesson. I think I think it's very important.
And then also like yourself, like you mentioned earlier how you will discover pieces that you're doing that you didn't realize were part of this. One of the pieces that you didn't mention, but it's in there.
So it's like, that's also important.
That's huge.
And it's like it's because realizing that the thing in its entirety is what's important, not just because I feel like sometimes the things that we focus like most on are things that we need to necessarily like remember, because some things we do just end up because you're talking about like different like mnemonic devices or way that people do to help remember, and that's like different for each people, just because sometimes like maybe it might be easier for someone to remember to do this, but more difficult for them to remember the other thing, which is what they then focus on. Because I find that that's the thing too. Like when I'm teaching that, I tend to focus on the things that I myself need to remind myself of, but there are other things that I also do that also people might need to be reminded of that I don't have to remind myself because of that. So realizing those kinds of points there and where it is. And I think that's a pretty helpful too, just because we're going back to like now dissecting like where the problem or where the solution could be on yourself, and then okay, now I can connect this to somebody else and how they're doing it.
An interesting thing, because you turned me on to that Souders guy's work at Standard Jiu-Jitsu. And while I was critical of some of his philosophies, I also think a lot of his mini games are brilliant. Essentially what he's doing is just specifics, but they're like hyper-focused specifics. You know what I mean?
It's like I look at it as it's like focus. It's like a way. It's like situational, like pretty much situational sparring, but it's like just specific situational sparring with like goals,
with like hyper focused mini goals. So I really love that, and I've incorporated that into my situational sparrings, and just the exercise of creating those mini games is been huge for me, understanding what's important and what I want them to learn, to create what the goal is in this specific spot.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like,
I would agree. And what we're talking about here is like the ecological like learning method, and it's I mean it's method I've been looking because I've looked into like other sport. It was popularized. A gentleman's name was Rob Gray, and I forget what sport it was. I want to say it was like volleyball. It was more of like a team based sport. But what they did is that they found that okay, the way that they learned the best is that they put them in these situations with goals that emulated that emulated what they would have to do in a game, but it's like a microcosm of that. And in terms of doing so, they get a lot of repetitions without it necessarily becoming repetitive because now they have to figure out different like varied like solutions like to that goal. And I do agree too because I've been doing that myself in various drills, not just grappling, but also in striking kind of elements of realizing like what are the important concepts, like what are the important concepts that I want the student like to learn from here, and how can they get it from what we do. And I think that's a good thought exercise in terms of doing so. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
yeah, just the act of trying to come up with the games has been useful to my own personal growth.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like because it's like we're saying it's like connect. It's dissecting okay what it is like we're trying to do and how do we get there, but now it's coming up with if anything, I feel like sometimes I don't know if you would agree, but like how I see is like sometimes with it being more like open, it's kind of more difficult to do than like if I did like in a technical kind of one step thing that's kind of almost, I wouldn't say necessarily cheap, but I think it's like almost less steps to do. Okay, just do exactly like what I do. It's kind of hard to like, all right, do this, but like, oh no, but not quite this. It's like you almost have to like, like okay, like how do I like what is the right framework to let them do it. And because it's like a fine line between all right, now they're just going to do whatever, between like okay, no, we want to do a specific thing. It's like a balance point, like okay, I want them to explore, but I also do want them to find like a specific like point. Like, kind of like I imagine those like maze, like as a kid where you have to find like the center. Like I know where they have to find a center, but there's might be multiple ways to get to that center point. So I don't want them just okay, we'll just go all the way out here. Yeah.
I think it's definitely harder, but a lot of why it's harder is because it's new to us, and the teaching moves in a sequence is also there's familiarity. Sometimes we're teaching stuff that in the same way that it was taught to us. So like that makes it much easier than what we're trying to do in crafting these situations.
Definitely, yeah. The familiar part, but I've definitely, but yeah, I'm on the same page as you, just in terms of it is very rewarding once you like have an idea, and because you're crafting. I mean, of course, it may be something similar, but you're doing it in a way, and then you're seeing. It's always great just to see things click when other people like something. It's like, oh wow, it's because it's almost like oh yeah, this is working, and so it's great to see it, and it's great to see in other people when they may not even be realizing, but they're moving like a lot better, or they're getting the concept, and that's like and that's a great thing like to see. It's like, oh yeah, seeing that oh yeah, I was correct in this kind of thing. And it's always like a refining. It's like refining, just like anything, right? Just there may be some things that work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that okay, now we're stopped. This is it. This thing works, and we'll just do it. It's like the process of okay, we're always ever improving. So that's kind of how I see it. It's just like a different method. Not just a different method teaching. I guess it's like certain teaching aspects, but now you're refining it, and you're just having I guess maybe like a different viewpoint in terms of doing so. And then I think that could be like I think I find it like beneficial, like for sure.
Yeah, if I had to rank my favorite aspect of teaching, it is seeing the clicking happen. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like somebody getting it's like seeing somebody like level up like in terms of skill. That's a great thing to see, especially if because you saw them when they had nothing, and then just oh wow, look at where they are now. Just seeing that growth. It's like seeing the small sapling and then like, oh, you come back and it's like it's like an actual plant or it's an actual tree kind of thing. That's great to see.
You used to be trash, but
yeah, look at this. Now it's just slightly more, but less trash than before. Yeah, that's yeah, no, it's great to see like leveling up, but and yeah, just the thought process of coming up with those, with those games or situationals or sparring or however you call it, it definitely is interesting because it's kind of getting into the it's like okay, like what is the concept? What is the concept I'm trying to teach, and how will this how will this sequence like help them, or how will these movements or making them doing these confined movements like get them to that point. So yeah, it's interesting to see. Yeah.
another cool thing that I really love now that I've been teaching for a bit is, first of all, I think it's really cool when I meet someone new who's like us, who it was love at first sight, and they're just all in. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I love that energy.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I'd never really seen it before until I had this long stint of, being with the same people for a long time. Is I think it's incredibly cool. Maybe the coolest is when I see someone and I think they're not going to make it. This is not for them.
Yeah.
And like, they don't even look like they want to be here. Like maybe like there's some kids in the kids class where they feel like their parents are making them go. And then they keep going and they keep going. And then, they turn a corner and it's like, oh, they're into it now and they're looking pretty good. And I never would have guessed that they were going to make it.
Yeah.
And now they're thriving. So I think that's the coolest when martial arts wins someone over that wasn't ready to love it immediately. That's a cool thing to see.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that, because so like the way I've heard like explained before, it's like, they call like, the 80-20 rule, but there's typically like there's like 10% of people that will never do something. They'll just not like it no matter what. I mean, like, oh no, I will never do that thing no matter what it is. And then I feel like we fall in this category. 10% of people, no matter what you do to them, they're gonna do that thing. Like you could like, oh well, whatever. Like one leg, well, I guess I'm doing one leg, like grappling now. Like, oh well, no matter what, they're gonna find a way to do that thing. And then there's the 80%, which is, now it's like the gray area. Like how do you get, which is like the key to anything. If you think about it, like how do you get like in terms of like reaching masses, like it's more of like, okay, they might like it, they might not like it, but it's the fact that it's variability. So yeah, I think seeing what you're saying is like it's catching on to the thing where it wasn't inevitable for this person to necessarily like it. Like there had to be like certain things that it was very much in their choice, and realize, oh, it's their choice that they want to keep doing this, and then it changes like that into almost like becoming something that they really enjoy doing and want to keep doing. I think that's always like great to see that kind of conversion, because I see like, because I'm just so used to being around people that have been fighters, like guys that no matter what, I find like most people that I talk on the show, no matter what happened in their lives, they would end up finding martial arts. Right? It's like kind of, it's like, okay, like no matter what, you would have ended up like here anyway. That's kind of how I realized, oh yeah, talking to these guys, it's like felt like lifelong martial artists. It's like they come from different backgrounds kind of thing, but you realize, okay, they found it and they just never like it was never like the question wasn't, oh, are you gonna do this thing? It's like, how can I do more of this thing? It's cool to see though someone that it's not quite on that same, and then still continue to do it, because I think if anything, there's more things going against them in terms of that, and the fact that they still chose to still go with it, that's great to see. Yeah.
Absolutely.
just the inevitable martial artist. I feel like that could be another title for the show. Just like people that end up doing it no matter what. But
I trained with a trial class guy last night, and
yeah,
it was so hilarious how giddy he was
yeah,
every time I would tap him out. He was just like, "Oh my god, that was so awesome!"
yeah,
like he
yeah,
was so into it. Like he was just so shocked. Like every minute, his mind was getting blown. Like
yes,
what just
yeah,
like seriously mind blown and just like giddy about it. And then he ended the roll and he's like, "Oh, you're so strong." And he's like at least 60 pounds heavier than me. This guy's huge. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, I'm not
yeah,
strong. That's not what's
yeah.
happening here.
Yeah, no, it's always funny like seeing that kind of stuff because it's very much like the people that have never seen like a magic trick before, but it's
Yes.
funny because you've seen that magic trick every day, and it no longer becomes like it's like oh it's just what I do. Like I'm sure like when I see like oh man like being able to see like card tricks oh wow, but I'm sure like for the magician like this is a Tuesday for me. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Like you're not wowing David Blaine with like, oh, is this your card, David Blaine?
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it also illustrates that the vast majority of the population has no idea
No.
what it's like grappling, and so when they
Very
try
true.
it, it's like mind blowing.
It is no, but that's the thing, and yeah, grappling is the magic trick. like wow, you could do that.
Yeah.
I thought this was just on TV. Oh, scripts, but yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, that's cool. But no, but it's good to see like that kind of shock and awe and of something because it's hard. Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's hard for me to relate to that kind of thing. If it's like, oh yeah, I guess that does happen. Well, if it does happen, it wouldn't really happen. Maybe not to that degree because you can almost like understand like what's like I guess like what's going on. But to someone that truly doesn't really understand like what's happening, and that's why they're they're surprised and they're giddy about it. That's that's cool to see because you almost kind of lose that kind of childlike enthusiasm like there.
It's nice to be reminded of that and be beside that when it's happening.
Yeah, for sure. It's good. It's good to see. And I guess so it's good to see people that stick with it, people that had a kind of maybe not guaranteed thing. Another thing I like seeing is seeing people that just took like a lot of time off and then decide to get back into doing it and then making it part just so because they have to almost become they have become a beginner again even though they're like and sometimes that's like that's tougher could be like a humbling thing because realizing time has time has happened but I'm still willing to pick up and learn this thing again. That's kind of what it's kind of what I mean what I try to be, not that I'm essentially taking time off but like I try to look at everything in terms of that kind of new way or figure out it's not new for me anymore but okay there's still some things I can still be doing and still some improvements and to keep looking at it as much of a beginner as I can or seeing it from other perspectives there.
I'm always proud when I see people come back because there's an insecurity in the back of your mind that is really trying to make you not go back and be a beginner again.
Yeah.
And so when I see people overcome that and say, no, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And they come back. I love seeing that because there's a kind of like a pride issue that they have to beat and defeat to get back on there.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, because that's the thing. It's almost like the further away you are from something, the easier it is to not go back to it. Because like, oh man, it's been so long ago. It's like, oh, it's been 10 days. Oh, it's been 10 years. Oh, it's been that. But no, you can always go back.
Yes.
It doesn't stop. I kind of like, what I said. Like I knew, like I was talking to this guy. He's like, oh yeah, I did boxing, for 2 years, but I wasn't that good at it. I was like, well, you stopped. So
exactly.
You're probably worse at it now than when you were doing it.
Exactly.
That's how time and that's how skill training like goes. So yeah, it's a but yeah, it's something that you have to want to do. So being able to choose that, like despite the back of your head, despite you pretty much fighting fighting yourself to do it, that's great to see. That's good to see someone win, I guess, win that internal battle with themselves against the anxiety of coming back. Yeah. Okay. And I guess are there anything like you're looking forward to in terms of training wise, or are there any like competitions coming up that maybe your students are looking to do? Yeah.
There's a revolution coming up. We just had a proving grounds last week.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that one, but it's round robin.
Yeah, it's like round robin submission only, right?
Correct. And one of my guys went to it, and Shiloh was there helping the tournament, running a table, the scoring table.
Got it.
And she saw his first match, and he got tapped out by a guy from my old gym, and I was just like, oh boy.
Yeah.
And then he drew the next match, I think. Either that or vice versa. His first two matches were a loss and a draw.
Okay.
And he dug deep and turned it around and tapped out the other guys in the bracket and ended up getting gold. So
wow. Okay. That's great to see. And that's also just great to see, especially the, just that, I mean, that's what a lot of martial arts is, going through adversity.
Yes.
But the biggest adversity isn't even necessarily the people that he goes up against. It's like it's himself and being willing to go out there, even though, oh man, I got subbed. Now it could have been very easy for him after he got subbed and draw. It's like, well, I guess that's today, and then just kind of like go, but just go out there and then to sub everyone else remaining to get gold. That's definitely quite, I'd say, a great mental achievement of not letting defeat get to you. So
yeah, totally. And I don't know what was in the guy's head, but the guy that subbed him ended up tying with two other people who had faster submission times, so he lost the tie breaks, and so he didn't even get on the podium.
Oh wow! So didn't even like get top three. Oh wow!
Yeah, and I don't know what played into his momentum shift, but it can work both ways. And I'm really proud of my guy for rising up and being clutch and just going for it. Shout out to Peter.
Good job, Peter. But yeah, and that's the thing. It's hard to tell too, and it's hard to tell. I'm sure if you ask Peter, he may not exactly quite know what was going on in his mind, but there was definitely like something happening there. I think it's always interesting, just I guess like psychology, or I guess just someone's like mentality, how they go about that kind of adversity of not getting the result that they want, and what they do afterwards. That's always like interesting to me, because I've had actually coming up. So I have a fighter that's fighting 2 days from now on Friday, and it'll be his second amateur fight. His first amateur fight, he lost by KO in the second round. So it's definitely not the result that he wanted. And we as a team, like afterwards, like, so what do you like? What do you want to do? Like, do you want to like do this again? He's like, yeah, I want to get in there again. This was months ago, and decides to go about it again. I think that's that's something.
Hello.
Something, well, already happened. So where else do we go from here? So it's just hungry for a win. So it's definitely interesting to see, and then just how you stack up against that adversity, and what do you do when situations get tough. I think that's what's important. And I mean, what I told him anyway too is that from the first fight, I was like, okay, there are definitely some things that you did that were working, and there definitely did some things that you did that probably weren't ideal or probably could use some adjustments. But no matter like how exactly the result would have happened, you still would have need to work on those things. So time's gonna go on. So I mean, you can focus on the result, but or what you can do is focus on what you need to do, which is improve on this, pretty much keep doing more of the things that were working and do less of the things that allowed your opponent to, to take advantage or get damage off on you or get better positioning. It's always a growth process. Like the game doesn't stop. The game's not going to stop for you. So you just got to keep on moving like for it, like no matter what. So yeah, so hopefully he took that to heart. He's been training, and we'll see how it goes. See how it goes on Friday. Pretty much like how I think like he's gonna earn what he's like put in so far. So no matter what happens, I'm behind him, and it's just a matter of how far does he want to go like with this, or how far does he want to keep doing this, and that's what's important. Like pretty much like what keeps you in is what's more important to me rather than. Of course, I want people to win. I want people to do well. That's not what I'm saying. It's just what matters more is that you shouldn't feel. I guess you shouldn't feel like you have to do this because already this isn't Gladiator. Like you're not forced to fight to the death. Like it's entertainment. You're doing it by choice. So you might if you're gonna do it, you might as well love it. And if you don't love it, if you're not putting your all into it, then that's a dangerous proposition because you're going up against some people that may want it more than you. And in this kind of thing, it's it's of course it's it's bad to lose, or it sucks to lose a basketball game or a tennis match, but the goal of that isn't to physically maim you. So yeah,
it's way different.
Yes, it's different stakes in terms of physicality. So
you can get really hurt. So you should have both feet in.
Exactly.
Not one foot in, one foot out. Like
not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then because there was a similar kind of situation. I think I told you about this like earlier, but where I had a guy that said he wanted to fight amateur, but I just got a sense that he did not. And I had the conversation with him, pretty much the same conversation of like, if you're not. This is a dangerous enough game where you can do everything right and still end up horribly, like the consequence could still be so bad. Like you can, there's just so many things that could go wrong. So if you're already not fully in it, then I can't be behind you, like in terms of that, because I won't let that happen. So
yeah,
it's Well, yeah.
And to your earlier point, I really do think so much of life is about how we deal with adversity,
Yes. Yeah, so much is how you deal with adversity, because the way adversity is going to happen to you, whether you want to, whether you seek it out and or not. But no matter, looking back now at all the difficult things or all the adversity that's happened, all of that was was a catalyst for change, or it can be a catalyst for change, because growth occurs outside your comfort zone. So if anything, I realize the more adversity I seek out, the stronger or more skilled or more the more I have to grow, to meet it. That's will it always be anxious or kind of nerve-rattling? Yeah, but I realize now that you need to seek out those kinds of things that are difficult and kind of treacherous to grow as a person. So I'm kind of glad that I've decided. That's kind of the way I go through most things, all in. But that's kind of the way. Yeah, I've never. No matter how bad the things I don't think I've. Yeah, the risk is always there. Risk is going to be there whether you decide to take it or not. And I'm glad that I've taken the risk that I have, because I've seen both ways they could turn out. But me as a person has grown because of it, no matter what the results were.
Yeah, I never want to be in a place in life where I'm not experiencing much adversity. I'm not struggling much. I'm not uncomfortable much because it
Yeah.
just means that I'm stagnating, like
Yes.
you need to be pushing. If you push yourself, you're going to have failures. You're going to meet
Yes.
adversity. You're going to be uncomfortable, and that's a sign that you are trying to, be better.
Exactly. Yeah. The fact that, yeah, fear of failure isn't going to prevent failure. The only thing that prevents is success. That's why it's like seeking out pretty much the more you seek out like failure, you end up realizing that that's actually the more successes you end up having. Like there, it seems, I mean, it's easy to say, but it's hard to do in terms of, because it is uncomfortable. Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, but being in those states of being uncomfortable. That's how growth is, because you have to get better because of that.
We took another trip to Brazil in the winter.
Yeah,
Um, their summer, our winter,
yeah, yeah.
and it was a lot of great training, as you know.
Yes.
This time around, there was a lot more local Brazilians that were training alongside us,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and most of them go really hard
Yeah.
and train forever. And most of our group is, you know, they're on vacation.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting that um, every training session, everyone's in at the first round or so.
Mhm.
And then by the end of the night, it was just me and Ender and the
The
Brazilians.
Brazilians just
Yeah.
still going at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so much so that I don't know if you remember Leandro,
Yes.
the the, the
The
super cop.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's a police. He's like a sergeant or some kind of ranking.
Captain.
Yeah. Cat. Yeah.
Yeah, he took me and Ender aside, and he's like he doesn't speak much English, but he
Yeah.
called us Kashka Grossa, which
What is that?
the literal translation is thick skin, but
Oh, okay.
they use the phrase to determine to label people who he calls like the real ones, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was cool because I was like, he was taking Ender aside, like because he was impressed with how well he was doing and
Yeah.
how hard he was training, and he's saying Kashka Grossa, and then I was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, Ender's so good. And then he's like, no, Endo, like you too. And I was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, and no, that's the thing, the tough skin, the willingness to put yourself like into the fire is
Yeah,
what's.
because especially against those tough Brazilians who were all like in their 20s,
Yeah.
much younger and fitter than I was, to be in the final rounds there where I'm near the end of my tank, and it's I'm not doing very well, but I'm in there trying, and I
Yeah.
think that's how you get better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, try. Yeah, because if you're not trying, then the action is the most important thing, and that's what you're willing like to take. I think that's very important. I was actually listening to it was like a clip from like Jocko Willnick's like podcast, and he was talking about SEAL training, and uh, people always like to make a big deal about, because he was a Navy SEAL, like, about how Navy SEAL training, because like the training it's not really preparing anybody for anything. Like what the training is supposed to do is to just weed out the people that don't really want to be there. Like it's to get out the vast 80% that could be swayed. Pretty much, if you can't embrace like the suck, then you have to get out. And then once you do that's when the learning like comes in. Once you realize, okay, you do have tough skin. Now you can now we can like work with you like there, which of course is kind of old school kind of barbaric kind of stuff. But hey, that's sometimes that's kind of what you need to get to that kind of level. It's like realizing how how much of the suck can you endure, and then keep going. So
One thing that I think is cool is that the ability to embrace the suck is is not you're not born with it, I don't think. And I think people think you are. Like
yeah.
I just started reading Goggins's book, and he wasn't that, and then he
No.
just decided to be. He
Yeah.
decided to become that.
If
And
anything, yeah, especially because he's very like transparent with his like life story that he
yeah,
very much was not the guy
very much not
that he
that.
is, which if anything that makes him go harder because he realizes how. I think that's why a guy like David Goggins or guys like guys that end up that because they realize the power of not just their own actions but of their mentality to decide to be unbreakable in that kind of way.
I think a lot of people feel like so much of that mentality isn't up to you. Like you either have it or you don't, and it's totally up to you. Like
No.
I wasn't as mentally strong as I am now when I was a kid either. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you work, you have to choose it, and you have to keep working on it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like you have to choose it. And if you don't, it's just like anything. It's just like any kind of, skill. If you don't work on it, then how do you expect for it to get for you to get more of it or for you to get for it to grow. And yeah, he's just decided yeah, him and other individuals like him, they just decided to keep going. And that's, if anything, I think that's so important because that kind of grit or that kind of determination, that's one of the most important indicators like for success. Not necessarily, of course, other skills are definitely great, but you cannot argue if you look at the top performers at any kind of like there's always, if anything, that's probably the most important thing was the amount of grit that it took for them to get there. As
In
much as
every
the athleticism and the skills and the intelligence and all that, grit was always a factor in that, if not the most important factor.
in every field.
Yes, across the board, like there. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're what you could be a scientist or like a marathon runner, whatever. It's the willingness to put yourself into the fire, to have that tough skin. That's the thing that makes you that propels you like to that. So yeah, I think that kind of grit is very important, and not letting yourself like get just being pretty much just choosing adversity that kind of way, and then being real is it's a habit just like anything else, just like they say like success is built on it's built on habits, and it becomes a habit because success itself isn't a habit, but there's a lot of habits that you can do that that lead to success because of the nature, not just because that that lead to it. And I definitely think grit is a very important thing, and it's a thing that no that's not okay, you have X amount of grit and nothing else for the rest of your life.
I think it's easy to forget also that on a related concept, if you haven't turned the corner, you're habitualized towards the easy route, towards seeking comfort, towards not pushing yourself. So you're used to that. You're good at it. So you have
That's your
lots of
default.
you have lots of reps at that.
Yeah.
So that's why it can often seem impossible, or it's really not up to me to turn the corner. But it just means that you have to rep the other thing that much more to rewire your brain to new habits, better habits.
Definitely. And I think the way I see it, talking about habits, it's like it's your default. Like what are you gonna do? Like anyways, like for a guy like Goggins, his default is the hard way, or being just the difficult thing. Who's gonna what's the thing? Yeah, who's gonna carry the boats and the logs?
Yeah.
But it's the difficult path. Like, and he's very adamant that wasn't always the way. He used to be fat, used to not want to do anything like with his life, but then he realized he changed his default actions, and that's what happens there. Or if you look at we were talking because we were talking about Tom Brady, or like any kind of athlete that's got like to their pin. Of course, there was definitely skill, talent, other things, but to be, I think, especially consistency and longevity, that's great all the way. Like I mean, there's some semblance of possibly luck like too, but in terms of like like grit's definitely the most important thing, to keep wanting to take the trauma on your body when all of your peers that have been on are no longer there. I think that's such an important thing, and that was his default. Like his default was the hard stuff, which kept him in there. Like it wasn't that no one else had access to the things he was doing. He just kept doing the things he did, like without having. He just did more consistently than other people, and the results just showed there. Yeah.
And his just growth mindset, always looking to improve. Like his running, he was never a runner, but his running in his last years, in his 40s, was better than any other part of his career,
Yeah.
Because he actually worked on it, He was constantly trying to improve. What are other ways that I can help my team win?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and just always seeking that out. But yeah, tough skin. Just having
Ashka Grossa. I love that phrase.
Yeah, that's great. And especially that's great that he single, or that he mentioned that like to you guys. That's because if anything, I mean, I just imagine like his life as a police captain, like in real, like you gotta have tough skin to do that stuff.
Yeah, coming from him, that was one of the greatest compliments I've ever received.
Oh.
That guy's probably seen some shit.
Yeah, exactly. And if he says like you have tough skin, then that definitely means something. Oh yeah, doesn't throw that phrase around. But yeah, cool. All right, we can wrap up here. Anything else like you want to say before we end the show, Endo?
I just wanted to say thank you for having me on again. I love you, man, and I love seeing you grow and improve and thrive. So
growth mindset.
Really, yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is just willingness to keep putting yourself into the fire. And I remember this one quote. It's like most podcasts like don't even get to like 10 episodes like there. So if you have more than 10 episodes, you're in the top. It's like you're in like the top 99.
Wow.
Or you're like the 1%. Like I am the 1% of podcasts like at this point. And so it's pretty crazy, just like as it keeps going on. And it's because it's really not. I mean, back to the grit aspect, we can end off with this. It's really, with grit, it's not really a matter of who's the best. It's a matter of who's left. And that just gets lower and lower each, like as you keep going. And I think that's so true. And as we're talking about, all-time greats, there's like, if you have that much grit and determination, you realize you end up having very, very few peers that can understand you. So, or very few peers that are willing to do so. And it just takes deciding that one day to do that, which then leads to the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. So to people that are realizing, thinking that it is impossible, it definitely is not. And there's definitely just because some people are farther along on the path doesn't mean that you can't do that same thing on that same path. And the reason like to decide to choose that, and no matter what, just because of the 80%, like people can look at the 80% thing and think, oh, well then why even begin? Well, the way I see, like, why not start? So I won't be I won't be the number one thing to do or number one finisher in a marathon. What that doesn't mean that I can't like complete a marathon. And if I do, then like what's like how many people can say that they've done X Y Z? It's not really the result. It's the fact that you're willing to put yourself in, embrace the suck like there, and just have tough skin. Yeah.
As someone who started martial arts pretty late in life, I'm here to tell you, like, just do it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's worth it.
Yeah, just do it. It's worth it. And that's the thing too. It doesn't matter like what's. Of course, it's yeah. I think there's also there's like a Joe Rogan thing. Oh man, I wish I started when I was younger. Well, you're not. So, but you can do it now, and there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing that's stopping you. There was this. I was watching a documentary on a boxer like Archie Moore, and he was they call him the old mongoose. He didn't win a world title until he was, I mean, on the birth record, they said he was 37 years old,
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. But he was also, he also was. This was fighting in the 50s, so he was and he was a black man, and so he said he was born in Illinois, but his mom told him, said that it was quoted, oh no, he was born in South Carolina. Kind of. So there's been differing stories on his birth, and the joke was like, oh yeah, I was born when I was 3 years old. But so he lied about his age to make him seem younger. So people speculated that he won in his 40s and that he was just lying about his age. So yeah, and it just shows, yeah. But the thing is, yeah, he just kept at it. Yeah, he just kept at it, and he never, just never. I mean, that guy for sure definitely had a lot. I mean, he had to have a lot of grit to be a boxer anyway, but to be a boxer in your 40s in the 1950s, that's
amazing.
That's like different kind of grit right there. But yeah, all right, we'll leave that there. People decide to do difficult things. Bye, Endo.
Bye.
That's quarter.